Well, hello there, Assurance Heroes, and welcome to the A-Plan podcast. A is for Assurance, and this is your weekly audit and risk talk show. He's Emre, the tech guy.
He's Andy, the communication guy.
All right, guys, what have we got for you this week? So this week's topic is, are your audit recommendations creating a rod for your own back? What do you think, Emre? What's your thoughts on this one?
Very often the audit recommendations turn out to be a stick for the auditee's back. There are several reasons for that. But first of all, let's have a look at the ingredients of a 2 thumbs up recommendation.
Yummy.
You think I can have a sip of that?
Be my guest.
I gotta know what a $5 shake tastes like.
When you're creating recommendations, you need to think about ARC. A-R-C. Mm-hmm. So it needs to be actionable, it needs to be realistic, and it needs to be clear. Mm-hmm. So actionable means we should be able to measure whether or not it's closed. The second thing is it needs to be realistic. So what are we talking about here? The due date. If you put a date on that recommendation, when you go back, they need to have had time to get it done, to get it closed. And I think the last thing is it needs to be clear. Very often, when you look at recommendations, they're not clear at all. They're very confusing. They're very ambiguous. We don't know what we're supposed to do. So we want to avoid anything like that. We want it to be actionable. We want it to be realistic, and we want it to be clear. Yeah, what do you think, Emre?
Oh.
There are many internal audit departments that I've seen where, due to the vague recommendation, we see the revision of deadlines more often.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, we don't want that.
No.
We absolutely don't want that,
not.
Right?
Of course not. So internal audit procedures should enforce that once the deadline is set, there won't be any revision afterwards.
Yeah. You've potentially got implications there with a regulator, right?
It's not only the regulators, but senior management, internal audits, the audit clients, as well as the internal audit departments themselves. This is a KRI for them, key risk indicator for them, so that all these parties follow the overdue recommendations very closely. It's really pain for many internal audit departments, these overdue recommendations.
When you're creating the due date on that, it's got to be realistic.
It is.
It's better that you give them more time, sufficient time to get it done, than you put on realistic dates down on this. Yes. So that ultimately, I think, is a huge point of importance there.
As I said, since the overdue recommendations is one of the KRI for internal audit departments, we all want to have as less overdue recommendations as possible.
Naturally, yeah.
And one of the way to do so for many internal audit departments is to make a big basket, consolidate all the recommendations that you may address to single person. But at the end of the day, although you may reduce your number of overdue recommendation, what you're doing is to increase the average latency of their closure.
Yeah, you're trying to simplify things and make life easier for yourself, but ultimately you're creating that rod for your own back that we were talking about before, because you're going to end up with a very vague recommendation, maybe something that's not clearly actionable or with a huge due date on it. I think it's better to sort of, we might categorize, but I think at the end of the day, we want enough detail, enough action detail to be able to say, yes, this is effectively closed, right?
Yes, and both parties should agree on the key points for closure. The auditors should say, if you share me this evidence, I'm going to close the recommendation.
Yeah.
So that the audit client feels secure.
Yes.
That the recommendation shall be closed when that key points for closure will be shared with the audit team.
What did the Prime Minister actually say to you?
He actually said this is exactly the kind of thing we should be doing.
What did he actually say?
He said this is exactly the sort of thing we should be doing.
Should be doing. Should does not mean Yes.
In terms of bad habits that we see a lot, I think on the point of being actionable, and this is again that you can measure the closure. Examples of problematic language or communication. I can give you an example here. It's a very, very common one. So entrance doors should be fitted to the control room with an automatic locking system, and the staff card reader device should be activated. Now, this is a very, very common way to write the recommendation, but we've got one word there which is causing you all sorts of issues, and it's the word should. Now, I know you auditors, and I know how you love this word should, right? What does it actually mean, should? When you say should, it's advice. For example, oh, Emre, you shouldn't have one more beer. You know, it's not going to be good for you. But Emre can say, screw it, I'm going to have it anyway. You know, I want to have another one, I'm going to have it. You know, there's no law, there's no rule, there's nothing wrong with that. You want a beer, you want a beer. That's it, right? So it's the same sort of thing. When you say the entrance door should be fitted to the control room, it means it doesn't have to be. This is advice. So the business owner can say, okay, thanks very much for the suggestion. I don't think I'm going to bother with that one. Obviously, that's not what you mean, right? So be careful of using that word should. Recently, I was talking to one auditor, and he said, oh, no, Andy, you see, when we say should, it's like the auditors should. It's auditor English. It means you have to. And my point was, well, that's very interesting, you see, because I don't know anything about auditors English. I know British English, American English, Canadian, Australian English, but in the English language, when you mean should, you definitely don't mean have to. So be very careful with that, right? Better to say, make it imperative. So you would start with the verb, the action, right? And you would say, fit entrance doors to the control room with an automatic locking system and activate the staff card reader device. So like that, it's clear, it's not a choice, it's essential, it's required, right? The other thing to watch out for is using this word consider. You see this a lot, you know, management should consider or consider installing or something like, no. How is that concrete? We can't go back and check whether or not that's done, because you could say, yeah, I considered it, I decided not to bother. So be very, very careful of that word consider. It's very commonly used as well. Final thoughts?
This is the end, beautiful friend.
The people watching us might consider why they are tackling on nitty-gritty details, but they are not. The tone, each word that you choose in your report counts. So
yes,
that simple selection of words should change the story altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got to be really very, very careful about this, because at the end of the day, if you're saying, look, when an auditor says should, we mean have to, well, by the people who are going to get the value from your report, the business owner, the auditees and management, they're not auditors, or at least they shouldn't have to be to get the value of it. So if you're using some kind of audit speak that they don't get, then already you've lost the value of your communication.
And which is true in all languages at the end of the day.
Yes, absolutely.
Not only for English.
What time is it?
If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find them, maybe you can hire the A-Team.
It's A-Team time. So if you've got an assurance problem, if no one else can help you, then we can, because we're your assurance agony ants. Send your questions to the aplan@zohomail.eu, and we'll be more than happy to help wherever we can. This has been the A-Plan podcast. A is for assurance. And remember, when your A-Plan's good, you don't need no B-Plan.